Hello everyone, my name is Suzanne Sankisi-Frey from Forest Research. This presentation is part of the Observatory Volunteers Training Programme for 2016. And I will be talking about the bronze birch borer, Agrilus anxius, which is a specialist wood boring beetle endemic to North America. So here you can see the bronze birch borer. It is a jewel beetle and a flat-headed borer in the family Buprestidae. It has this amazing olivey bronzy colour that you can see on the slide with a metallic finish. They are slender beetles, with the males being smaller than the females. So the males are 6 to 9 millimetres long and the females are 8 to 12 millimetres long. Males tend to have greeny coloured heads and females have coppery bronze heads, and their wing cases reach to the end of their bodies. This slide shows the larva and the pupa of the bronze birch borer. Here on the left you can see the larva, so it is very pale, almost white, with a flattened body and two pincer-like spines at the rear end. The head is mostly hidden, with only the mandibles being easily seen. And larvae range in size from around 2 millimetres long to 38 millimetres long when fully grown. And on the right you can see the pupa. It is beginning to resemble the adult, so it starts off this creamy colour and then becomes darker and assumes adult pigmentation as it matures. So as the name suggests, the host tree is the birch. In the bronze birch borer's natural host range, its hosts are the paper, the grey, the yellow and the sweet birch, none of which are native here. But if we were looking for this beetle in this country, we'd mainly be looking at our two native birches, the silver birch, Betula pendula, and the downy birch, Betula pubescens, and the various hybridizations between them. And also the Himalayan birch, Betula utilis, which is a popular amenity tree for landscape projects. So on this slide, I have various features of the silver birch tree to help us identify it. The most distinguishing character is the white bark, which often has thin horizontal lines and diamond-shaped cracks. And older trees have dark ridges on the bark and cracks at the base. The downy birch has darker coloured bark and tends not to have the diamond-shaped cracks. And you can see on the right here the general shape of the silver birch tree. It can get to around 18 metres high. So the downy birch looks similar but doesn't have the pendulous branches, and it can get a bit taller, around 21 metres. The birch has yellow catkins like those in the small inset photo, and they are visible throughout the summer, and the leaves are serrated and sort of triangular shaped. Silver birch is a popular woodland, garden and amenity tree, and it is also used as a pioneer species and can also be planted as a nurse tree to protect other young trees. Birchwood has some commercial uses, and of course birch has great value to wildlife, with hundreds of insects, various fungi and birds relying on them for food and habitat. So where is the bronze birch borer? Well, thankfully it is not here yet, and its current distribution is still restricted to North America and Canada. Its natural habitat is mixed hardwood and boreal forest. So boreal forests are characterised by having long, severe winters and short, warm summers. So a very wide range of climatic and environmental conditions. These forests consist of relatively few tree species, mainly spruce, larch, firs and other conifers, along with a smaller number of deciduous tree species, with birch being one of them. In its natural habitat then, Bronze birch borer populations generally exist at endemic levels, and it is considered a secondary pest which only causes problems on trees that have already become weakened, stressed, or are dying. However, periodic outbreaks have occurred, but they have consistently been associated with predisposing stress factors such as drought or very high temperatures. And an example of one of these outbreaks occurred in the Great Lakes region of North America, when the death of 105 million birch trees was linked to bronze birch borer attack following a severe drought in the region. So here on this map, you can see the current distribution of the bronze birch borer in North America. And its natural distribution has historically coincided with that of its host species in the northern boreal and hardwood forests of Canada and the USA. But it has also been able to extend its range southwards and westwards because of additional planting of birch species as amenity trees. So what would be the impact of the bronze birch borer if it arrived here in the UK? Well, if it did get here, then we predict devastating effects on birch populations with consequential effects on the environment, the economy and biodiversity. And this is because the bronze birch borer is considered to be the most serious pest of birch in forestry and amenity trees in North America. And it can attack all species of birch. However, the susceptibility varies between species, with the white-barked varieties, such as ours, being the most susceptible. So we know that our trees would be severely affected because in North America, the Americans planted European and Asian birch just for a bit of variety in their forests, and virtually all of the European and Asian birch had been wiped out by the bronze birch borer by 20 years after planting, whilst leaving their native birch trees still standing. So why did this happen? Well, it happened because the European and the Asian birch have no joint history with the bronze birch borer, and therefore have no co-evolved resistance to the pest. So because of this evolutionary naivety, we predict that our birch will not need to be in a stressed or weakened state prior to attack by the bronze birch borer, and instead our healthy trees will be attacked and will be able to offer very little resistance. And to make matters even worse, birch of almost any stage or age can be colonised. So trees with stems of greater than 2.5 centimetres diameter can be colonised, and branches as small as 1 centimetre can subsequently be utilised by the larva. So this means that even our nursery stock can also be affected. I have included this slide here on the emerald ash borer to highlight what can happen when an alien species is introduced into a new environment where the conditions are good for establishment and spread, hosts are numerous, and have no resistance because they have not co-evolved. We would predict a similar scenario to occur with the bronze birch borer and birch in this country to that of the emerald ash borer and ash in the USA. So there have been major consequences of that unresisted assault by the emerald ash borer in the USA. It was accidentally introduced in 2002, and in just 12 years it has rampaged through 24 American states and 2 Canadian provinces, during which time over 20 million native ash trees have died, with a concurrent cost to the American economy of more than £1.7 billion. And of course there's been an enormous ecological cost too. So we see the American invasion by the emerald ash borer as a model situation of what can happen after alien pest introductions. And we think that similar patterns of establishment and spread could occur here if the bronze birch borer arrives here too. So if the bronze birch borer did arrive here, we might expect the invasive populations to spread rapidly, as the adult beetles are strong flyers and can easily cover fairly long distances. And also we have lots of birch plantings in this country, so there will be plenty of host trees available to them. Now we know that the bronze birch borer can tolerate a wide range of climatic conditions, because that is a feature of their native forests. So the climatic conditions here in the UK probably wouldn't limit them in any way. Eradication or containment of the bronze birch borer would be very difficult due to the cryptic nature of its life cycle, which I will go on to next, and also the fact that populations may not be detected until they have already become established. So if the bronze birch borer does gain entry into the UK, we would expect widespread mortality of our birch in our woodlands, our cities, and also our nurseries. This slide shows the life cycle of the bronze birch borer. The time that it takes for it to complete its life cycle depends on geographical location, local temperatures, and condition of the host tree. So in warmer climates, the life cycle will take 1 year to complete. However, in cooler climates, it may take 2 years to complete. In this country, we predict that the life cycle will probably take 2 years because of our relatively cool summers. So the adults that you can see in the top left photo will emerge between May and July. They live for about 3 weeks, and therefore adult beetles may be present in the canopy for a large part of the summer. And during this time, they feed continuously on leaves, they mate, and they lay eggs. So egg laying occurs about 1 week after emergence, and you can see the eggs here in the top right photo. So they are oval, a creamy white colour, and look slightly flattened. So the eggs are laid singly or in clusters, in bark crevices and cracks, commonly at branch origins, so where the branches join the main stem. Each female can lay around 75 eggs in her lifetime. The eggs hatch after 2 weeks, and the tiny larvae immediately begin to mine into the phloem and the cambium to feed, and they create these meandering larval galleries. And you can see this in the bottom right photo. The larvae go through 4 developmental stages or instars, and it is these larval stages that do the most damage to the tree. When the weather cools and temperatures drop, the fully developed larvae will stop feeding and construct individual shallow pupal chambers in the outer sapwood, in which they overwinter and then pupate. And you can see the pupa in the bottom left photo. After pupation, the adult beetles bite their way to the outside of the tree. So how do we detect the bronze birch borer in the field? Unfortunately, it can be difficult to detect, particularly in the early stages of infestation and before the adults emerge. And it could be that by the time it is detected, the population may already be established and it may be too late to manage or eradicate. So it's difficult to detect because much of the life cycle is hidden. So for example, the eggs are laid in crevices, so they are difficult to see, and the larvae feed in the inner bark, so we wouldn't see them, and the pupae are also hidden. However, the adults are around for much of the summer, but they are up in the canopies, and they are small and well camouflaged, and it is unlikely that you would see them. And also, the adults are very mobile and they do not tend to stay on the trees that they have emerged from. And although the adults do feed on the leaves, we can't use feeding damage as a reliable indicator, as it's thought that the damage to the leaves is negligible. But there are some telltale signs and symptoms that we can look out for that can indicate the presence of the bronze birch borer. And here on this slide, we have the sort of symptoms that you might see on a whole tree scale. So foliage and twig death usually occurs from the top down, and you can see that here in these two photos. The first thing you will notice with a bronze birch borer infestation then is yellow, sparse, stunted foliage in the upper crown, and this progresses to twig and then branch dieback. And often you can get this leaf retention that you can see here on the right, so the dead leaves here are retained by the tree and they don't fall to the ground. You may also see epicormic growth, so an abnormal proliferation of shoots sprouting at the base of the trunk. This slide shows the pattern of decline in relation to a birch borer infestation, with class 1 being a healthy tree. Class 2 and 3 are in the early stages of an attack, and these can recover if treated. Class 4 is in an advanced stage of attack, and 5 is almost dead. So once a tree reaches these last two stages, they are more or less beyond help. Once 50% of the tree crown has died, there's virtually no going back. And trees can decline like this over several years before dying, but they can die during a single year if they are severely drought stressed. Here on this slide, you can see the meandering zigzag galleries that are produced by the tunnelling larvae, and the individual tunnels become increasingly larger as the larvae develop and grow in size. These galleries are tightly packed with frass, and it is these galleries that disrupt nutrient transport and at high densities can girdle and kill the trees. Trees that have been attacked by the bronze birch borer can develop the trunk welts that you can see on the left-hand side photo. So these are caused by callus tissue that is produced by the tree in response to the larva feeding and building galleries in the bark. So this callus tissue occurs as swollen bumps or ridges on the branches or the main trunk of the tree. If the callus is produced quickly, then the larvae will be overwhelmed by it and die. If the tree is stressed or has no resistance, then the callus production won't be quick enough to prevent the larvae from completing its full development. On the right-hand side, you can see a typical exit hole produced by the adult as she chews her way to the outside of the tree. These exit holes can also become stained by rust-coloured sap, which you can also see in the photo. These holes are 3 to 5 millimetres wide and they're a D shape. So lumps and bumps on the branches and trunks and D-shaped exit holes are good indicators of the bronze birch borer. So what can produce look-alike symptoms on birch? Well, longhorn beetles and other bark beetles may leave exit holes in the bark, but these tend to be oval or round, and they usually only occur in dead trees. And any condition that causes dieback or foliage discoloration of the crown, for example, drought, waterlogging, or root disease. This slide shows some biosecurity information. In the past, our worry with the bronze birch borer was that it might be accidentally imported into the UK from North America in wood and bark chips for biofuel, because it is thought that the larva in a prepupal stage can survive the chipping process. But now, hopefully this risk is reduced because we now have relatively new regulations that allows us to import only from a pest-free zone. So this slide also shows the most important biosecurity measures that you would need to follow if you were investigating potentially infested sites. So you would follow high-risk biosecurity measures at all times, And most importantly, make sure that you don't take any birch wood, bark or tree material with you when you leave a site, as it may harbour eggs, larvae or pupae. And also ensure that all vehicles are checked for wood debris and adult beetles before leaving a site. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this observatory presentation on the bronze birch borer.